Greatest integer function is defined as a function which is defined from R to R, and it is written as shown here, and it assumes the value of greatest integer less than or equal to x. Now we will decipher this whole definition by breaking it into parts. First of all, it says that it is defined from R to R. It means that its domain is also R and codomain is also R. What does R stand for here? It stands for set of all real numbers. Our second part, it says that it assumes the value of the greatest integer less than equal to x. Now let's look at it one by one. The first part to look at it is the integer part. So what we are going to get as fx is an integer. And how do we get that integer? It is that integer which is less than or equal to x. So we look at all the integers that are less than or equal to x. So if our x is at 2.5, we will look at integers from minus infinity to 10, minus 10, minus 9, minus 8 and up to 2, because x is 2.5 and we have to look at all the integers less than or equal to that. Now out of all those integers we pick out the greatest integer. And what is the greatest of all those? 2. Greatest integer that is less than 2.5 is 2, and that is what the crux of this whole function is. If you have a number and you are asked to find out the greatest integer function of it, you look at all the integers less than or equal to that number and pick out the greatest among them. Now it is written using a special sign. It's a square bracket from which we have removed the top horizontal part and we have left the bottom part, and from this representation you can memorize the alternate name for this function. And what is that? Floor function. How is it related to it? In this square bracket we have removed the ceiling part of it and left the floor part of it, so it is also called floor function. So to understand it better, let us look at an example. So we are asked to find out the greatest integer function of 3.5. So first we look at the integers that are less than or equal to 3.5. These are 3, 2, 1, 0, minus 1 and so on up to minus infinity. These are all the integers that are less than or equal to 3.5. And now what do? We pick out the greatest one out of it. Now how do we get here? Let's look at this. We have this number line. We have marked all the integer values here and 3.52. Now what do? We stand at 3.5 and look towards minus infinity side. We look towards left hand side of your screen, that is the minus infinity side, and on that we mark out all the integer values. After that we pick out the integer value that is closest to us, and that is our answer. Now let's look at some other values and try to find out what its GIF will be, so that we understand it a bit better. So these are the values we will look at. So for x equals 0, what are the integral values that are less than 0 or equal to 0? Now 0 is itself an integer, so we will include 0 also and all other integers that are less than 0. So minus infinity to minus 1, 0 up to there. And out of all these, 0 is the greatest. So our answer will be 0. How about 2.5? This case is similar to 3.5. We look at the negative side of number line and stop at the integer that is closest to us. So our answer will be 2. And similarly, for all the other values, you can on the number line look towards minus infinity side, put your finger at the number that is given where it will be on the number line and pick the integer that is closest to your finger. That will be the answer. Now we will see what its plot looks like. So we are taking simple GIF of x and this is how it looks like. So let's assume we take a value of 1.5. So it will lie somewhere here. Now the greatest integer less than 1.5 is 1. We look at all the integers from negative infinity up to that number, up to here, and the integer closest to us is 1. So that is our y. So we will put a point here. Similarly for 1, the integer closest to it from negative side of infinity up to 1 is 1 itself. So this will be our y. Now let's look at some of the negative values. Suppose we have minus 1.5. Again, we will look towards the minus infinity side of number line and stop at the closest integer, and the closest integer for minus 1.5 is minus 2. So that is our y value, and this is how we plot greatest integer function. Now one thing you can notice is that if you draw y equal to x line, it is always on the right side of it. So after this we will also see least integer function, and once you see its plot, you will realize that every time you feel that you are getting confused, you can also look at it like this. Now if I ask you what the range of greatest integer function of x is, now we have seen that it is defined from R to R. So its domain is a set of real numbers, its codomain is set of real numbers, but what will be its range? For that, let's look at this graph again. What do we have here? We look at the y values to find out what the range will be. So we have here minus 3 all along, minus 2 all along, minus 1 all along. Here there will be 0 all along. These two are overlapping over each other, so we are not able to see. Then we have 1, 2 and 3. So you can see that this minus 3, minus 2, minus 1, 0, 1, 2 and 3 are the values that GIF of x takes. So these are the numbers that form its range. So its range will be set of all integers. Now you can solve these questions and see what you get. Try to find out the answer and put it in the comment below. One suggestion that at least at this point of time when you are just a beginner, one suggestion I will give you is that try to plot these functions. So we have to find out between x for the range minus 1 to 2 of x. X is from minus 1 to 2. So find out the value of the function at minus 1, find out the value at 0, find out the value at 1, find out the value of 2, plot a graph, and then proceed. That will help you visualize and also make things a bit easier. Next we look at least integer function. Now it sounds quite similar to greatest integer function. The only difference here is we are using the word least instead of greatest. It is also defined in a similar way, but how is it different from greatest integer function? Again, we break the definition in parts and we will see how it is different. So we have to find the integer. Earlier we had less than, here we have greater than or equal to. This part is same. So if I have 2.5, I will look at all the integers that are greater than or equal to 2.5. So for 2.5 it will be 3, 4, 5, 6 and so on. And out of those I pick out the least one. So for 2.5 we have 3, 4, 5, 6 and so on. Out of those the least integer is 3, and that will be our answer. Now this least integer function is also called ceiling function. Why? Again, we can look at the symbol that we use to represent it. Again we have a square bracket, but this time we have deleted the floor part of it and kept the horizontal part at the top intact, and it's a bit like ceiling. So that's how you can remember the symbol and the correlation, alternate name both. Now again look at our number that we saw in greatest integer function 3.5, and let's see how we can get to our answer. So we look, this time we draw the number line and we look towards positive infinity. In greatest integer function we look towards negative infinity. In least integer function we look towards positive infinity. And again we do what we did earlier. We mark all the integers and pick out the one closest to us. And for 3.5 it will be 4, and that is our answer. Again I put the same numbers that we had in case of GIF. Now let's look at them one by one. we have x equals 0. What is the least integer function of x? It is 0, right? So what this tells you that in case of integer values, you get the same number both in least integer function and greatest integer function. And why is that? Let's look at this picture again. If you are standing above 3, for example, it doesn't matter where you look towards minus infinity or plus infinity. The integer closest to you is 3. You're already standing on it. So that's why when we have integer values inside greatest integer function, we get, or least integer function, we get the same number. Similarly, for 2.5, we will look towards positive infinity, 3, 4, 5, 6 and so on, and 3 is closest to us. For 2.01, again we look towards positive infinity. Here you see, you might think that closest integer to us is 2 in case of 2.01, but remember that we are looking towards positive infinity and only taking values that lie on that side. And once we stand at 2.01, 2 will lie on the negative infinity side. So our answer will again be 3. But the moment we jump to the other side of 2 and take 1.999, this time once we look towards positive infinity, we will see 2 closest to us. So 2 is our answer. Now I had shown you the plot of greatest integer function. I want you to plot least integer function of x yourself. This will help you understand the graph drawing process, and besides, least integer function is similar to GIF, and usually GIF related questions are asked. So trying to plot this along with trying to find out the two questions that I gave you in GIF, and once you do both of those, you will understand this topic really well.